Hello and welcome to The Gray Area, where I give interviews with developers, talk about gaming news, and give you unique insights into the industry. My name is Jenesee Gray, and this is the 131st episode in a show called Birds of a Feather. Today I have Samurai Punk's Nicholas McDonnell, director, Biz Dev artist, here to talk about Feather from Samurai Punk. I lost a little bit of the interview at the very beginning, but we're going to pick up right now with him talking about the formation of Samurai Punk and just jump right in.
Yeah, so we went from making game jams at uni pretty loosely and really just as friends, or we were doing work with other students at the time. And then we took a prototype that Winston had worked on, which was Hazamino. There's a Tetris mashup with an infinite runner for mobile. So you build the levels on the right-hand side of the screen while the character is running to the right. And then if you run out of pathway, you die, or if you hit a block, you die. But we shipped that really quickly. And the big shift was that we were just making prototypes or making games, and Screensheet I think still fell into this category, which is our first real game, and it was making actual money when it came out. But and that's when we brought in our third team member, Justin. But we were building games for the sake of the project. We weren't like building a studio, and it wasn't until we sort of grew up past that and made our first hire and our office space kind of changed a little bit once it was more than just three friends making stuff that we shifted, and this was around 2016, shifted into more of like a studio culture situation.
Got you. So it sounds like this was originally like a game jam that just kind of ended up being successful.
Yeah.
Not the plan, but unexpected side benefit.
I mean, Screensheet definitely was as well. Like Screensheet was a prototype made at a game jam. A publisher was interested in it. That encouraged us to keep working on it. So we started Screensheet before we shipped Hazamino, started the studio to ship that mobile game, but then we were like, okay, well, let's just use Samurai Punk as an entity, as the legal entity that's going to ship Screensheet now. And it kind of just grew from there.
Wow. I mean, that's one that wasn't on my radar until I began to research. I kind of came into the Samurai Punk land about American Dream level. And from there on, Feather. So I did not know about Screensheet until I was doing some research for this, and that looks amazing. I can't believe I missed this. So now, can we blame you for a whole new crop of cheaters with their
maybe but it's not cheating
in this generation? Right? No, I mean no. It's kind of. It seems like
training them for the games.
I see training. See my air quotes in the air. Okay, so now the question: the Samurai Punk name of the studio.
Yeah.
How did this come about?
So we were using Samurai Punk as a name since we started jamming together. So it was kind of like it was the only trace of like me and Winston working together. We worked with a bunch of other people, but whenever we worked together, we always called the project like presented by or made by Samurai Punk. But the name actually started as, on the first game, Samurai XX, which was it's a game about a blind samurai who sees by sound. And we called ourselves the Samurai Punk Rock Stars. And then over time on making new games, it went down to Samurai Punk Rockers, and then we just went Samurai Punks and just cut the S. So eventually we just shortened the name to the point that by the time we were, actually establishing our like business in Australia, we were just like, well, it's a good enough name as any.
Yeah.
And it seems to have edged out really nicely long term. But it's not like we didn't pick the name, even really pick it at all. It just kind of like was a combination of things that existed, and it still seems to have stuck really well and suits the kind of games we make too, which is coincidental but really good.
It also makes a lovely t-shirt.
Yes, lots of lovely t-shirts.
Definitely. So I've done a little bit of traveling, and one of the places that I really enjoyed was I was outside of Sydney, maybe 30 minutes outside of Sydney, in a place called the Valley, and spent a little time there. And it seemed to me that when I was there, which was several years ago, there was kind of an incoming tide of younger people, maybe in their 20s, who'd graduated uni, that had degrees, or were having a really hard time turning that into a career or finding something to do with that. And a section of those people that I knew were game developers, game designers, people in the industry, and finding maybe the inspiration in the Melbourne area and Australia in general of studios that had made it, and people looking for that. Do you find that there are a lot of, maybe people that are in their 20s, etc., that are looking for, that studio that they can point at, triumphantly and say, look, you've used your degree and you've done it. And do you encounter people asking that of you?
Yeah, 100%. So I mean, I even I taught at the university that I was bagging on before, and there's something like 10,000 students a year graduating in games fields, and I think this is just compared to the amount of maybe there's 1,000 jobs a year available.
Yeah.
So, and that's just in the I finish my degree, I go get the job, as opposed to what we did, which I guess is finish the degree and start something with no cash, basically, which is nearly impossible. I think if I was doing it now, I don't know what I would do. We were very fortunate at the time, living with parents, small investments from family, really small, just enough to pay for one PAX. And then once the game was starting to make money, we paid off those debts and we were, moving on from there. But yeah, there is a lot of studios out there that act as inspiration, but I also kind of think it's a bad thing in some ways because in the same way that all those big indie hits that appear to have come out of nowhere are not great for the industry. They create this sense that anyone can do it and that you just have to make a great game, or in the case of Screen Sheet was just luck and timing. It's a fine game, but I look back on it now, I'm yeah, it was definitely luck and timing. So because our first mobile game was a complete failure, we made $500, and then the degrees, and having taught there now, they do create this sort of emotional sense that once we all leave our degree, we're going to be able to either get jobs, or the indie scene is so healthy that we're going to be able to start a studio and be fine. And that's just the case. We've been around for 5 years now, and since we started in Melbourne, we formed in Melbourne and we're still in Melbourne. I've seen so many friends studios just rise and fall right next to us, win Studio of the Year one year and be gone the next year.
Yeah.
So it doesn't even really matter if you're super experienced when you come in. It's just possible for anyone to fail right now. And we've only gotten by because we've bootstrapped from the start. We've never received external investments besides government funding, and we're able to keep our costs low as we scale sustainably, rather than working on some huge project. Feather is such a small game, and Rainbow First Blood was a really small game. We did those titles because we wanted to broaden our palette and experience without investing hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars into a single project like we did with the Dream. But we're in the situation where we already have financing now because we have titles that bring in revenue.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's a very tough thing right now, and especially, I mean, indie games are challenging, but it seems like depending where you are in the world, that can actually be compounded by the locale.
Oh yeah, in Australia it can get. We are an affluent country, so I definitely don't want to complain that we don't have enough money to do things, and there is some government assistance available depending on which state you're in. But GDC, for example, is a very important. GDC and Gamescom can be really important for business.
Yeah, it's a tough flight to get to everywhere, expensive.
Yep, but everything is a really expensive flight to get anywhere. Even Asia is expensive for me to get to, even though it's super close. So we don't see those benefits, which is I think one of the reasons that even the great developers might do really badly, because our marketing budgets are just implicitly 4 times higher than any other indies. Because we have to do a PAX. I have to fly everywhere.
Yeah.
And PAX Australia is a great show for community building, but it's a terrible show for press.
It's so new. I'm hoping that changes, but yes, I think the press probably feels the same way you do, where they're saying, "Why should I fly so far away?"
Yeah. Or in the case of we have the press that do come over are from Sydney. They're not.
Okay, you're I've already spoken to you. I see you all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
I have to say, as a side note, that I love that Darcy Sandel is your lead programmer. Not to get all, raw women in the industry, but that just makes me pleased when I look at sites and say okay, well, this is a small company, sort of, as you said, bootstrapping it, and this is someone who's part of the team, and hey, lead programmer, neat.
Yeah, was she our first hire? Yeah, Darcy was our first hire out of the team of 3 originally, and she was I worked with her at uni. She was an incredible student. She'd done work, but outside of the fact that she was an incredible hire, and we're really lucky to have her, and that's why she's our lead now. She's grown with us. It's really important to me, and I think to the studio as a whole, to ensure that so now that we're 9 people, we have an office culture, I guess. I think that office culture benefits from more diversity, and I think our work benefits from it directly. And staying around long term, I don't just want to be a group of 20 dudes who is completely isolated, because that's what we started. And I'm pretty proud that, like, if you look at our team now, we're much more diverse than we were like 2 years ago, even.
Yeah, it's interesting because you have, I mean, you already have the American Dream, so you're the end game for most studios. You're kind of backwards you're evolving, you know.
Oh, right.
Yes, exactly. You're not just making the guns are out, all dudes play this game. Which,
Yeah.
speaking of American Dream, it has a unique sense of humor, and it seems like a lot of your games have that kind of quirky sense of humor. But some of the
Yeah.
game mechanics are an interesting balance, kind of between practical and excessive for a laugh, but also with the actual practicality. How do you balance the fun and that practicality to kind of quantify that elusive quality of fun? It is very fun, by the way.
Specifically in the American Dream or in the other
Yeah,
games?
in the American Dream. I mean, you have all the reloading, you have the kind of over the top,
Right.
animations of the mechanics that make it funny just for some reason. And it's hard to quantify
Yeah.
fun. It really is.
Yeah. Well, I guess one thing with the American Dream as well is it's like the mechanics directly affect the theme in a very fundamental way. You know, the game is about using guns for everything, and games are meant to be somewhat fun or somewhat enjoyable, or they evoke an experience, right? But the game is also a satire and a critique of gun culture, and that's both in the US directly. Obviously, the game is called The American Dream, but my focus is that I'm the design director. Is I want the American Dream to sort of like poke fun at how we respect of guns in video games, and I think that's a really strange dichotomy we have as game developers, especially as an Australian game developer who's doesn't have a personal relationship with guns. The relationship I have with guns is completely developed through video games. And I love shooters. You know, our first game was a shooter. American Dream is still kind of a shooter, even though it's more of an adventure game. And then I play Siege all the time. So it's a strange world to live in, and I wanted to reflect that in the mechanics. Like, the guns we have are fun to engage with. The mechanics, like, I mean, we talk about like the shotgun, which is like a metaphor for masturbation, but is also like an effective tool in the situations you're using it.
Hmm. I never really thought about that. The idea that you're in Australia, not the gun masturbation, but the idea that you're in Australia, where even knives are problematic. People get in. If you have a bar fight, you're more likely to get hit with a broken bottle than you are to be stabbed, or you won't be shot, basically. And that's kind of a different perspective from Americans, especially where I am out in the middle of the boondocks, where guns are pretty common, and it's not unusual to have that sort of be a part of your culture. And it's interesting that an Australian studio would make the game, and I think it's safest really that you do to make that kind of ironic look at it's almost like it's clearly a parody, but it's almost like I think I've read that you thought you kind of made it like Disney World's I forget what ride it was, but very similar to like,
The World of Tomorrow.
The World of Tomorrow.
Yeah, in Disneyland. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's an interesting concept that the Australian studio is making the game about guns that isn't probably, and you're saying your intro to guns is kind of games, like that's how you have connection to that.
Yeah, games and film and TV. It's weird. Like, I think I probably see a gun pretty much every day in some form of media. It's just unavoidable right now. Like billboards in the city, trailers on YouTube, that kind of thing. So we are very immersed in them, especially even as kids. But because they're not a part of our lives, our relationships are very different. Like, and how respect for them is maybe even lower than, say, a responsible gun owner. Like, if you own a gun and you're responsible and you've trained with it and you use it for hunting, or you just use it, you keep it locked up at home, like, your relationship with that gun is actually more correct or even more safe than, say, mine would be, because I haven't experienced it directly, nor do I have the sort of respect for what they can do. Which I think is a problem. And we kind of wanted to reflect that mechanically in the game. I mean, sort of to get to your earlier question, like, how do we balance those things?
Yeah.
I don't even know if we effectively did balance those things. I think with the game may be too fun sometimes. Obviously, the game has its issues. But we wanted to tell a story throughout the mechanics, how, the gun starts off kind of like a magic tool, like it does everything. And as the game progresses, it stops it slowly starts to not be as effective as a tool for everyday life and just becomes a tool for destruction again. Where, and then the story follows that along the lines, right? So that was what we were trying to tell through the story. Not to spoil it. I mean, it's been out for over a year now.
Yeah. Anyway, if you haven't played it already, then tough.
Yes.
Deserve spoiling. Yes. No, but the fact that it's in VR too, it just makes a whole new element of, immersion. That's really interesting. The only time I really played it was at PAX. I forget which one it was, but there was a VR setup, and I did play the demo there. Yep. I didn't complete it, so I shouldn't say, but yeah, no, I love that. All right, so now on to Feather, which the game of the hour. So, would you like to describe Feather, other than me reading, it's an ambient flying game where the player takes control of the bird? What would you describe it?
Yeah. So this is a weird game because even when I do like a press interview for it, I don't even like have a pitch. Feather is like a chill game where you're a bird on a big island having a really nice time. That's kind of how I describe it. And there are other birds flying around, and you can interact with them if you want. You can choose not to. It's a very musically driven experience, so the soundtrack is actually scattered throughout the island. So in order to listen to the complete soundtrack, you have to explore and find it. And it's a game fundamentally about intrinsic reward rather than extrinsic reward. So allowing players to set their own goals and set their own path.
How's the reception been in the last week?
It's been interesting. It's selling okay. Not super great on Steam. So, if you listen to this and you buy it on Steam, please leave us a review because it does a lot for us. But overall, this has been our most emotionally responsive game that we've ever shipped. Like, people have written on our Discord like 10 paragraph long responses to how they've been sort of taking the game, and they've been positive ending. And people are saying like this has been helping them get through tough periods in their life. They've been like really enjoying just playing it for 10 minutes a day just to take a break. But then there's also the hyper negativity around the fact that the game has no objectives and plot or story, which I was 100% expecting. I don't know if you know much about the history of the game. It started as a prototype called Fruits of a Feather on itch back in 2016, which was the same sort of function. It was, you're a bird, you fly around a big island. It wasn't as detailed or as well populated or as big or as polished in any way. It was just a 2-week prototype. But it had one goal, which was there was a lot of fruit scattered around the island, and you could collect it, and it showed like a number out of X. I think it was out of 192. It was 192 for early on. And it was that game did okay on itch as a free download. It got a bunch of like 50,000 downloads lifetime. And I spent a lot of time reading the comments. People liked it. They said it was really nice. It was still the same sort of tone. It was very chill. But what was interesting for me was reading those comments about people saying like, I played for 30 minutes or so. I collected some fruit, but then I realized this game isn't about fruit. But not everyone will get that. Some people would just say, oh, this is just a lame game and collect fruit. That's not very interesting. But the people that got past the point where they realized that was kind of an irrelevant mechanic that I just added last minute, because I had just added it last minute.
Okay.
In the jam, I was just like, we were actually trying to make an Ace Combat clone with birds.
Wow, that's an evolution.
And so I was just like, look, guys, I can program collectibles in like 2 minutes. So we did. It's funny how things work out like that. And then, people just really enjoyed using it as a space to chill out. They said like the number was kind of irrelevant to them. They just found it pleasant.
Yeah.
They felt the controls were nice, and being a bird was nice, and the sense of freedom and the music was really good because we did have some of the tracks that made it into the final game were in the original prototype. Okay. So I thought a lot. I mean, it's been almost 3 years since we released that first version, and I thought a lot about like what would this game look like if I cut all reward mechanisms and all direct motivational things. So extrinsic goals that the game sets upon you that tells you like you should do this. Can I get a player to get to the point where once they play it, they understand it quicker? They get to that place of peace and find a space for themselves to relax or to just have fun with the mechanics. So that's what I focused on, trying to get it.
Yeah, you can clearly sense like inspirations like Absu or Journey. Although,
Yeah,
like you said, it is basically no goals, enemies, combats, threats,
yeah,
essentially. And when I was playing this, and I decided that it would, of course, be best to try a game live in front of everyone for the first time. Always the
yeah,
best. And I played it for a while and began to feel really anxious, like maybe I'm playing it wrong because I'm not finding like an objective or a quest giver or something that's giving me, a step by step progression feeling. And I did
yeah,
spend some time in the trees with the fruits, like, and then they would respawn slowly, and I said, no, no, I can't do this. So I just
yeah,
flew around and enjoyed it for a while, and it's a really interesting concept that a game almost has to have these traditional, reward, challenge systems to feel like familiar, and how very disconcerting it is to not feel that, and in a good way.
yeah,
And it's a strange time too for that to launch right now when we're having such an avid discussion in the industry about difficulty in games, along with
yeah,
approachability and accessibility and things like that. And Division Two, Apex Legends, Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice. It's all right now, in everyone's feed,
yeah,
and you're hearing people say like, oh no, on one hand, I want to play a game because it's fun, I just want to enjoy it. No, I have to have a giant challenge and be better than everyone. There's like this culture clash that's happening at the same time as you're like, play my beautiful bird game. Are you
yeah.
getting, like, do you feel like you're a part of that discussion? Do you feel like that is kind of reflecting on people's feedback to you right now?
Um, yeah, that's a really good question. Um, I, yeah, I think it's kind of coincidental. I mean, we launched this game because it just come hot off the heels of GDC and PAX, and we really wanted to just have it done for business reasons. Like, we need to start moving on to some other stuff, and winding down this project is a good thing. And it's weird that we launched right after Sekiro. I'm playing that at home. It is quite hard, I guess.
They just
Um,
added easy mode. Did you hear that?
oh, no, I didn't know that.
Yeah, in
Probably
response to the
still,
discussions.
yeah, and I guess we are part of that conversation. It's really a weird one because I mean, I objectively, this game has a stance. The game itself has a stance on. But that's not to say that our other games don't have their own state, and um, I I don't think there is I mean, accessibility is one thing. Like, I'm definitely pro accessibility in all formats. But on not necessarily on difficulty,
Yeah,
because
approachability
difficulty
is what I'm calling it because it's such a
yeah,
weird, quantifiable term.
yeah, and it kind of comes with the concept of even having goals. So a game can have motivations separate from having a reward mechanism. A game like Sekiro has a story, but it also has reward mechanisms in the fact that like it's got juice and it like feels good to do combat. Like, you could have a game that's just running around like Shogunist Japan killing things, and that would be still a very fundamentally similar experience. It just doesn't have the same reward mechanisms overlaid on top, or the same a plot that you're moving through. And yeah, I think Feather definitely like is moving away from that explicitly. So we have reward mechanisms as well in the game. Fly over a brazier, it lights up. Fly through a cloud, it has a nice effect. If you go through a ring, it plays a song. The grass reacts to your presence. Like, everything, I've tried to make everything feel as soft and as responsive and as alive as possible. So the game sort of says, like, yes, I know you exist in this world.
Oh,
Here's how
okay.
I say thank you. When you fly past a crystal, it makes a nice sound. So that was kind of where I was heading for that game. And it kind of actually came from a talk by the Don't Starve developers. This is where the concepts of extrinsic versus intrinsic reward, where the game says do these 10 tasks, and then when you finish, you kind of feel a little hollow because you haven't been able to see beyond those 10 tasks and find out what else there could be. Whereas if you don't state the goals up front to the player, like, I could have said, fly through all 12 rings in the world, or 9. Yeah. But I didn't, because it means that the player, one, doesn't know when they're finished, which is good. And it also means that the player, and so they get a little extra sense of mystery, which is really nice. But they also can choose not to complete that task, and they won't feel less of a player. They won't feel like less of themselves for doing that. Um, but then, by having no goals up front at all, like so 0 goals, you kind of it does make it a much more accessible experience, and we have found this game does resonate a lot more than I expected it to, I guess, with children and the elderly, which is great because I think at like a broader sense of accessibility in terms of cultural accessibility, asking a lot of the player has a lot of mental load it puts on you. Like our first real game screen sheet, asks so much of the player and expects a lot of you as well in terms of existing knowledge. Whereas fundamentally, Feather can be played by just using the thumbstick. So you can just move the bird with the thumbstick. You don't have to use the tricks or anything. And it's still a fine experience like that. And anyone of any age can play it and enjoy it. And enjoy it for what it is, which I think is really important too.
Yeah. No, it has... As you fly faster, I get that sense of like excitement, of like roller coaster, of like, ooh, there is a reward for going through this and going high and flying down and sort of, understanding, I guess, the idea of flying and how that feels. And there are several games that are coming out about flying or where you are a bird flying.
Yep.
And I feel like this is my favorite one because I do get motion sick. And I've played a couple of them and had bad reactions where, it was more about that than it was about the experience of playing. So I appreciated being able to at least play this and feel the excitement of speed, but not the sickness of the motion. So that was, I enjoyed that.
Yeah, one thing that's interesting that we did is really dialed back on how simulation-y the game is. I think it might be fundamentally what might make you stick out with those other games, because I was trying some other stuff out recently. And it mainly comes in from the birds sort of, it almost has AI, but it attempts to always level itself back out and go straight and flat. And what that means is you kind of always have like a central frame of reference, like so you don't roll the camera up and down much, and it definitely doesn't roll left and right. So if the bird rolls, the camera is still straight.
Okay.
Which obviously is not realistic. Like a bird would freely be able to roll and would freely be able to backflip and dive and do a full flip, but by taking that away, it makes the game like control more accessible. Like again, making it easier for larger age groups, but I guess it has knock-on effects which are beneficial for motion sickness as well.
Neat. All right, so you said you had to wrap this up because of business needs, which is practical for any game. Does that mean you have something upcoming and perhaps something that you want to tease at all?
Nothing on the horizon, actually.
He's like, give me a break. I just got done.
I am planning on continuing a little bit of work on this, but we have a couple of people on this to get it out for Switch and to get it running on Switch in the first place. So that was one of the things we just had to stop at a certain point. We will be updating it to fix the existing bugs, and I would like to add some content. But the primary stuff we're working on is some of it's behind closed doors on a new project that's maybe 2 years off. And then some of it is contract work. Like I said, we grow sustainably, and part of that is taking on client work in order to pay the bills and ensure that the shortfalls, like this game could have been a failure, but we already had work lined up if it was. So with the game being not a complete failure and the contract work already being lined up, my staff will get a nice Christmas bonus. So that's a good situation to be in. But unfortunately, nothing we can tease right now. We might put Rumbo out on other platforms because it was only part of the Humble Monthly back in January, but we haven't decided. I mean, some of the stuff just hasn't been decided yet. We might expand on that. We might just ship it as is.
Yeah. Okay, well, so people who are listening know this came out on PC and Nintendo Switch. Do you want to share any places that they can find this, other than the obvious doing on Steam search?
Yeah, I mean, the best way to go is just samuraipunk.com is our website. It has our store, and it also has direct links to the major platforms you can buy it on. It's on itch, Discord. It's actually available on our Discord as a purchase. Yeah, that's a new thing we tried out.
Yeah.
It's not.
How are you finding that?
It's as a developer, it's easy to work with, but it's not moving many units.
I see. Yes.
It's smaller than itch, and itch is pretty small.
I guess the idea is that you can see when other people are playing and then, form groups easier and things like that. And there is that sort of passive online component to this, but it is probably not as key as for some other games.
Yeah. I like it personally as the like community building exercise. We have a fairly active Discord, and it's been more active now that we launched Feather. The Discord is discord.gg/samuraiPunk. Everything is like that.
Enjoy spelling samurai. That always takes me a few tries.
But yeah, it's a cool platform, and I hope it grows, and I want to see what they're doing with it. It's just got a bunch of discoverability issues. Like right now, to join the server, if you want to join the server just to join it or to buy a game, you have to type in Samurai Punk in the join message. But you can't like search for the server or for the game in the like main hub search, which is odd. So not as far as I'm aware. So because we're verified, but we're not partnered.
Okay, that's so weird.
So like we have a custom URL, but it makes sense that if they have all these games shipping on storefronts in their server, you should be able to go like search games on Discord, but the name should come up, but it doesn't. So, but then they only rolled the feature while I was at Jenesee, and then the second it came out, I started submitting a game to it. So because I was like, it's better to be on the forefront. If it fails, it fails. If it doesn't, it becomes big. I'm glad we were there early and figured things out. Because so much of this business is just about building relationships with platform partners and publishers, so that when you have something or big, you need a bunch of money or you have access to something, you can get that access. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So, anything else that you feel like you wanted to say and didn't get a chance to say?
No, I think I kind of covered it.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you to Nick, and I will put all the links in the upcoming podcast. And stay tuned for more from Samurai Punk.